Hi folks, my name is Dalton Mortimer and I am the Authenticator. And I just got done watching the final two episodes of Agatha All Along. Jesus freaking Christ, that was a fantastic show. And now comes an interesting moment, or at least it was an interesting moment for me. And I don't think I'm going to wind up being alone on this one. Because one of the reasons that Agatha All Along was so amazing was because, well, it scratched my mystical marvel itch, which is of course definitely a thing, but it also put in quite a lot of the legwork from a conceptualization, history, and understanding of magic perspective. Like, looking at this show from the perspective of a practitioner is amazing. And and regardless of the kind of bittersweet way that the show ended, and I'm not going to spoil it, I'm going to maybe allude to it somewhat, but I'm not going to spoil it. Um, Given how kind of bittersweet the show ends, we now have to ask ourselves the question, because I don't know about you, but I was vibing with this show from basically the word go, both from a, yes, I'm a giant freaking nerd, so duh, yes, but also from a practitioner perspective. And I know I didn't imagine it, but the Ballad of the Witch's Road itself, the central sort of conceit of the show, and in the comics, the road is most definitely real and is definitely a thing, but that's, again, that's more nerd, less practitioner. Um, but the song, The Ballad of the Witch's Road, is so well done from a doing their research and doing it in such a way that it actually is going to appeal to practitioners' perspective. Because whatever your particular practice, especially if you're at all into folk magic or historical magic or magic from a historical perspective, I know Drake Stratton Kent talked about this a lot. Frater Acker has a book called Changeling, in which he's very much kind of doing the same sort of conceptualization that the show definitely did. And the song fucking nails just on a general, like, this is a thing that should and probably, like, on some level, ties into actual traditions and actual history perspective. Because throughout history, there's always been those of us who were magic practitioners. And this is true even in places like ancient Greece and other polytheistic countries where there was a nominated priesthood and their rituals were closer in line to magical rituals than they were to religious rituals exactly, but or to what we now think of as the difference between magical rituals and religious rituals. But there's also always been the ones, especially among folk magic and sort of folk shamanism, indeed, whose job it was to stand between the light and the dark, to be the intermediary, the intercessy between life and death, between good and evil, between bad and good, in other words, and especially related to chthonic energies, energies from the underworld, or that that not just blur but define the boundaries and the power that can occur when you conjure with both hands is an old hoodoo phrase. I first heard it from Hoodoo San Moise's book. Um, but yeah, the idea that one, true power comes from standing between the light and the dark. Terry Pratchett actually freaking nailed this with regards to his witches books. I believe he refers to it as being an edge witch, or just sometimes someone who works around the edges. Um, the idea of liminality itself as a power. That the most powerful you can be is when you stand betwixt the light and the dark, between good and evil, between things that should be opposites or should be binary, but instead of viewing it as dueling or opposing forces, you view it more from from the perspective of the balance, from the perspective of an intersection point between boundaries. Hell, Hecate herself, probably the quintessential witch goddess, and all her glory. And obviously, Jack Rail has done an amazing amount on this particular topic specifically. But Hecate's first role historically was as a crossroads goddess. She was also the goddess who led Demeter in search of Persephone, and she was one of the intermediary goddesses who would intercede betwixt the realm of Hades or Hades and the realm of the gods and or the realm of humans. And there's always been that role for us. There's always been that aspect of what it is to be a witch, to be a cunning man, to be a conjure doctor, to be a root worker, to be a practitioner of things like Kimbanda. Hell, one of the central conceits of Kimbanda is the 7 crossroads of night. And, obviously there are people like Jake Stratton Kent. There are people like, I want to say Frederick Ashton Chasson. I know there was a book recently, it's a book I own, but I'm not going to ramble while I go looking for the book on my shelf. But there have been books, especially a lot recently, with regards to the role of the Goetia or Necromantia as an intermediary or a intersection point of the underworld, the chthonic, the sublunar, the Saturnian, and the realm of the celestial, the solar, the Jupiterian, etc. And the gods or spirits who draw from that power and in some sense create that power and sustain that power and define that power, like Hecate, like the Morrigan, like the Fates, the Norns, like Queen Mab, the unseelie queen of the Fae, in that sort of contemplation. And how you can even look at this, if you want to look at it from a more New Agey perspective, the balancing of elemental energies and how important the 5th element of spirit is and how it sort of becomes an expression of them all. We have this legacy as those who dwell between the light and the dark. The people who are between, and from that sort of in-betweenness, that liminality, draw power, draw authority, draw, all of this deeper conception, this chthonic, this sublunar, this Saturnian, this Quithothic energy, and in so doing also is in some way accountable to that power and accountable to the responsibility of it. And I think what we have here in Agatha All Along as a sort of format for the sort of proto-pathworking I have in mind, and in particular in the form of the Ballad of the Witch's Road. Damned if that's not a call to arms for those of us who have dealt with this conjure with both hands. I exist between the light and the dark, but no matter, because I am between attitude. That's another quote from Terry Pratchett that I always really liked. Specifically the character of Azuli Goggle in the book Witches Abroad. But, and obviously many reasonable practitioners have devoted a not inconsiderable amount of their energies to this intermediary between the light and the dark, the power of the crossroads, the power of the tutelary spirits, and especially the power that arises when they cross over. How, again, crossroads is to folk magic as almost a central axis in a lot of these traditions, or at least I have yet to see a form of folk magic that doesn't place a tremendous amount of power on crossroads, graveyards, and places where intermediary nature spirits or elementals or gods of the in-between thrive and exist. Hell, Hermeticism, Hermes Trismegistus, literally a tripartite Hermes who himself was an intermediary messenger god. And again, also Hecate, also the Morrigan, also the Fates, also the Norns. Even gods like Odin or the Dagda, etc. So, here's a thought. The show gave us a template, and all of the trials in the show were about very central axioms of magic. Protection, potions and herb lore and green witchery. Some degree of working with spirits and working between life and death and being brave enough to hold death's hand in mind. Again, this fucking song has so many layers to it and shows so much goddamn work and works on so many levels from a practitioner perspective. So, what should we do, friends, Romans, countrymen? There's a habit of making pathworkings, and damned if this one isn't basically gift wrapped for us. So, I guess what I'm saying is, the road is there, and so I dare to risk this heart of mine. The spell is cast, how long it lasts, I cannot divine. But the road is there, and so I dare to risk this heart of mine. And while we're on this topic, I'm not even necessarily sure how much creating we actually have to do here. There are already, as I have listed throughout this video, so many gods, and so many spirits, and so many entities, and so many, hell, even Saint Cyprian of Antioch, the sorcerer saint of especially recent fame in the magical community. Whether it's him, or whether it's Hecate, or whether it's Mab, or, Queen Mab, the Queen of Arandarctus, monarch of the Unseelie Fae. Whether it's the Baron, whether it's Death, whether it's the Fates, whether it's the Norns. There are such entities, and I can't be the only one who feels this sort of chthonic Saturnian gist with the song. I certainly felt power in it when I was singing it, and there's obviously some major thought and articulation that went into making it, and whether they were fully aware of what they were doing from a practitioner perspective or not, crossroads are central to almost every tradition, and this role of the cunning folk, the hoodoo man, the root worker, the person who works at the margins and in the in-betweens and in the intersection points of the crossroads. All of this is there, and people like Jake Stratton Kent and people like David Rankin in his Liminal Rites of Hecate, etc., ad nauseum. The work is there. Even the Abramelin has the Abramelin text has the creation of the Liber Spiritum at a crossroads, I do believe, or is that the Liber Fictitum Spiritum? I can't speak today. That has that. But regardless, almost every tradition, especially the sort of at the fringes chthonic tradition, or goetic tradition, literally in the Greek sense of the goes, and the necromantia, has this tradition And damned if the power of these forces, especially given that this show was meant to be a Halloween show and was meant to appeal, I think, maybe not exclusively or specially, but it managed to appeal to me, and I don't think I'm alone as a practitioner here. So, shall we seek the road? The road, in this case, eventually culminating probably in the crossroads that will inevitably be overseen by the powers of those who keep the crossroads, whether it's the folkloric devil, whether it's the Baron, whether it's Hecate, etc., ad nauseum. And don't you think it's high time that we had something like this to unify us all behind the general notion that we should take up that role? That witches, shamans, cunning folk, sorcerers, goes, necromancers all through history have somehow been patchworking through the centuries. Follow me, my friends, to glory at the end. Let's not let this be just another piece of pop culture. I think it has more potential than that. It should be a Halloween classic. There is absolutely no question in my mind about that. But it also can be a hell of a lot more. If we take this chance, if we take this invitation from all the greater powers of Samhain and Halloween and autumn and the October country and the boundaries between summer and winter, if we use them and we use the song and we use the template of the trials from the Ballad of the Witch's Road even, and yes, even in the show they say the road changes for the cover. So, shall we then seek the witch's road? Follow me, my friend, to glory at the end? I say heck yes. I say, here is a power, a purpose, and a plea, my fellow practitioners. Follow me, my friends, to glory at the end. Cheers, guys. I'll see you at the end. Seekest thou the road to all that's foul and fair? Gather, sisters, fire, water, earth, and air. Darkest hour, wake thy power, earthly and divine. Burn and brew with coven true, and glory shall be thine. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Circle sown with fate, unlock thy hidden gate. Marching ever forward, 'neath the wooded shrine, I stray not from the path, I hold death's hand in mine. Primal night giveth sight, familiar by thy side. If one be gone, we carry on, spirit as our guide. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Blood and tears and bone, maiden mother crone. The road is wild and wicked, winding through the wood. where all that's wrong is right, and all that's bad is good. Through many miles of tricks and trials, we'll wander high and low. Tame your fears, the door appears, the time has come to go. Oh, down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Down, down, down the road, down the witch's road. Follow me, my friend, to glory at the end.